Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming to give me an opportunity to talk about the issues in Wayne County and the things that are going on in Wayne County. It's an opportunity, and throw the questions as you will.
We started out talking about the issues in Wayne County. What issues do you see as a priority for your first few months in office?
That's a great question. I think the real priority is we've got to get voter support again for things that go on in Wayne County. I don't think voters care very much about Wayne County government. I don't get the idea that they trust it, so I think the main thing is really the transparency that's necessary to say what you mean, keep everything above board. There shouldn't be secrets about who's hired, about how much they get paid, and there shouldn't be any secret about the direction we want to go. I think we just have to be very, very straightforward with citizens. And I think in a matter of a few months, people will start to gain some faith again. It's a long process. It didn't take forever to tear it down, but we've got to build it back up.
What kind of benefits do you see county government getting with you in office than the current situation?
I think the main benefit is probably 35 years worth of experience in the county, in leadership, getting results with issues, whatever they are. I mean, I've been the sheriff of Wayne County for 2 terms. I've been the police chief in the city of Detroit. I've been the county, an official in the county prosecutor's office for a number of years. And so I've been able to lead and work budgets in the county and do it effectively. And I think probably what I see as my strongest strength is I've been able to prove for a number of years that you give me a job to do, give me an adequate amount of money to do it, and we get it done. And I think and we get it done without a lot of fanfare. Let's just do it. The citizens deserve it. They pay taxes for it. I think I've understood all my life that it's all of the citizens of Wayne County that are paying my salary, which means my allegiance needs to be to them.
How are you going to use that law enforcement background to make people feel safe about coming to the Detroit sports venues, the restaurants, and draw people back into Wayne County and feel good about coming here?
I think that's a great question. Let me start by saying almost 70% of the county's budget is for the courts, the prosecutor, or the sheriff, which means whether we like it or not, 2/3 of the budget is law enforcement related. And I don't think there's anybody in the field that's even close in terms of understanding how all of those functions work, how to fund them appropriately, and then secondly, has the regional cooperation to talk to the mayor of the city of Detroit, to talk to 43 other police chiefs and say, okay, how do we do this together? Let's quit duplicating services. Let's quit the big me, little you kind of stuff. Let's get the most effective bang for the bucks that we have. And when we do that, we create the quality of life that you're talking about that brings people to the city. Too often we do something, we build a business and we don't think of all of the collateral issues. And so the business suffers because customers are scared to come after 9:30. The parking lot's full of glass, theft issues and problems. So, law enforcement and quality of life, I think, has an awful lot to do with attracting businesses, attracting people downtown to use the businesses that are there, and to grow our economy.
What's your overall experience in actually managing a budget?
Yeah, I've managed some large budgets in my life. I think the biggest would have been the Detroit police budget, which was about $450 million. And I think not just managed the budget, we actually had a surplus. We didn't spend it all. And in the year that I managed the budget, we reduced homicides and shootings in Detroit by 27%. We complied with the consent decree in Detroit 50%. This consent decree has been going on forever. And obviously you have to get 100% compliance to get out of it. It had been going on 6 or 7 years and they were at 30% compliance. I raised it to 80% in 1 year, an additional 50%. And we cut response times down by 25%. That's the amount of time it takes for the police to get to you once you've made a call. So, I think we improved performance significantly, but we also didn't spend all the money, which is part of my issue about most things. It's not money that's as big a problem as poor management. And if you know how to manage money and you know how to manage people, which means you know how to lead effectively, then I think the taxpayers get the best bang for their buck.
Mr. Evans, sorry. Ms. Evans, my question is, I want to know, you spoke about management, your style of management, will you be able to motivate the current staff at the executive level, as well as your staff coming in, hitting the ground running, and do you anticipate a large or a slow transition? Or?
You know, I think we got to have a fast transition, because I don't think people are going to sit around and wait for us to figure out what to do. I think we have to know what to do. And that's a key question with leadership, because my style is to lead from the front, which means be out there and be involved. That doesn't mean I'm doing the work. Your workers are doing the work. But if you're out there and you're involved, then you know what jobs need to be done. You know how people feel about the jobs that are done. And you're in a position to change people's way of looking at their job. You know, counties tend to be bureaucracies because when politicians are elected, they tend to pick political cronies to be their workers. And that's so that you are well set up for re-election. But re-election's 4 years down the line. You got a lot of road to cover before re-election. So my theory has always been get the brightest and best people you can, set a direction, get everybody on board to understand the direction you're trying to go, and then let's work toward that together. And that's what builds the loyalty. Otherwise, when you hire the cronies, you got the loyalty because their job is, based on your loyalty to them, their loyalty to you. But it doesn't move the dime. It doesn't get you anywhere. And so I think you've got to build the loyalty by working hard with a bunch of people. Give them the latitude to do their jobs. How many folks are micromanaged at work all the time anyway? You have creative ideas, but nobody wants to listen to it. You got to motivate people. You got to let them use their expertise. Certainly, you got to keep them in some parameters. But to me, that's the fun of leadership, and that's the fun of managing, is to be able to get good people, get an idea of what you're trying to do, work to get in there, and then we can all clap at the end, because it's always a collaborative deal when you win. When you're the boss and something goes wrong, it's just the boss's fault. When everything goes right, it's a team effort. And really, that's the way it's supposed to be. Somebody's got to fall on the sword for the things that don't go right, but most of the time, you ought to be able to celebrate the things that you're doing well. And the county has done a lot of good things in past years, and we just need to get back to that.
What do you think the county lacks from a leadership perspective, like the most recent years?
Well, in the last several years, there are two things. Either, because of indictments and because of bad deals like the jail and bad deals like the airport racetrack and a number of other deals, I can only see it happening one or two ways. Either the boss didn't know what was going on, so shame on him. Or if he did know what was going on, so shame on him. I don't think there's an option, and so leadership really is, you got to know what's going on. And that doesn't mean micromanaging. That means understanding business well enough to know the county's job is to use people to provide services for other people. That's all we're there for. But that doesn't mean you don't use business practices. Just because we're not selling widgets doesn't mean that we have to run it like, like a bazaar. Let's run it like a business. Let's not waste money. Let's work with our regional partners like the mayor of the city of Detroit and the surrounding county executives and look at our entire region and say, what do we really need? As an example, we've got 750 miles of county roads in this county. But we have money to fix 25 miles a year. Now my grandchildren can do the math there and figure out we're never getting out of that unless we figure out a way to get an influx of money in to fix the roads. To me, that's a regional ask. That's where the mayor of the city of Detroit and the county executive from surrounding counties hold hands with each other and go to Washington and make the ask, or wherever. You don't start out by saying, for example, well, just raise the gas tax. That's the last thing you ought to be thinking about. Just what is the result of raising a tax? Fewer cars sold, more strain on the people that need to buy it. I'm not saying that couldn't be an end game at some point in time. You never know what the future is. What I'm saying is you don't see the leaders now collaboratively doing the kinds of things I'm talking about, which is go and make a big ask about things we have in common. All we hear about is the fighting, don't we? You know, this person's fighting. Let's talk about what we have in common, not what our differences could be.
What kind of relationship do you have with the current mayor of the city of Detroit and the other tri-county county executives?
Well, the mayor of the city of Detroit and I have worked together. I've either worked for him or with him probably 20 of the last 25 years. When he was prosecutor, I was one of his chief assistants. When he was the deputy county executive, I was one of his assistant county executives. And when he was prosecutor, I was sheriff. And so, you know, we've had a good working relationship. He's definitely endorsed me in this race and is very supportive. And I think that relationship goes a long way to a level of trust that said, we just want to move the region forward. We don't really want to have game playing between us. Mark Hackle, who's the county executive in Macomb County, is the former sheriff of Macomb County, as I was the former sheriff of Wayne County. And so we did collaborative things for years together, and we're personal friends. And so those things, I think, make a difference going forward. I talk to L. Brooks Patterson in Oakland County often. I mean, our politics aren't the same, but our relationship is healthy, and I think that's important to try to move the needle forward.
What do you think needs to be done regarding the Wayne County Jail?
That's a great question that I don't think anybody honestly has the right answer to. What I do know is we've lost $100 million that we're never going to get back, and so people just, blame it on who you need to blame it on, but just understand that money's gone. There are additional dollars that will be necessary to finish the existing site, and I don't know if that makes sense. There are obviously buyers that would like to buy that existing site, but what people don't know is, as a part of that deal, they also want to buy a number of other buildings that are functional, like the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice, the juvenile detention facility, and so you sell all that, what do you do with those functions? If you look at the next thing, which is Mound Road, might be a decent site. There's a prison there that could be rebuilt to house a jail, but then you'd have to build a courthouse there because you can't transport prisoners across the road downtown and back. I mean, first of all, it's terribly dangerous. Second of all, it wouldn't be cost effective. So building a courthouse would be about $250 million additional dollars. And so I don't know the answer. What I would do was spend the least amount of money I could immediately to do whatever rehab is necessary in the existing jails, and then take some time to deliberately think this thing out and figure out what's going to be the least costly to the taxpayers and is going to make the most sense. I think that would be my end game until I knew a lot more than I know now. And anybody that's saying they know more now doesn't. Obviously, the incumbent wants to clean it up and make it look good before the election, and everybody else has bits and pieces of information like I do.
Being trusted and being transparent obviously are important to you, but what is most important to you? What do you want the citizens of Wayne County to see from Warren Evans?
I think it is the trust and transparency. I think those are really the main things, but the other thing is, I have a passion for getting work done. And I think most Wayne County people know that. I think sometimes people look at the law enforcement background and say, well, is that similar to being a county executive? And I think actually it is, because if you're the leader of a large department, you're managing a budget and you're managing people. You're not out there arresting crooks. I mean, I did it sometimes, but that wasn't a big function. That wasn't a big function of my job, whether it's the sheriff's budget, which was $150 million a year, the Detroit police budget, which was $450 million. My job was to motivate people to go out and get work done for the benefit of the public. And I don't think there's any difference between, that function, whether it's law enforcement or whether it's county executive or mayor or whatever else it happens to be. The key is to be able to motivate people and to be the kind of leader that people feel like following because they know you're working. And I think that's a strong suit.
With the possibility of an emergency manager coming into Wayne County, what do you plan to do to prevent that?
Well, let me say three things. I don't know if I have them in the right order, but right order in my mind. Number one, I think the governor really doesn't want to appoint an emergency manager. And so whoever gets elected county executive better have some management skills to be able to try to solve the problem, because if they can't, I think you can count on the governor coming in with an emergency manager. That's number one. Number two, the emergency manager will have responsibility. I mean, if he could take over the function of the county executive, and he could take over the function of the county commission, but he can't take over the function of the other 4 elected officials, the register of deeds, the clerk, the sheriff, and the prosecutor. And so the style of an emergency manager is not to come in and negotiate with anybody. I mean, that's not what they're there for. They're in for a quick period of time to fix things. Well, in the county, the fix is not going to be that easy, because they can't tell any of those 4 what to do. And so there's going to have to be, some discourse back and forth to work through those questions and those issues. And that's negotiation. And, again, you got to be a regional person with background with respect to the subjects and a knowledge of the people in order to be able to do that. And so I think for at least those 2 reasons, we're less likely to have one. But let's just say we did, number 3. What I hear everybody say is, well, we'll just sit around and wait 2 or 3 years until the emergency manager's gone, and then we'll take over. That's not what a representative of the people does. What you do if there's an emergency manager, even though you don't have the power, you still have to be the moral conscience for the county, which means when the emergency manager starts buying goods and services, you're the one that sits there and says, are you buying them from Wayne County companies? Are you supporting the region when you're doing this? Because if the reality is you're going to clean up Wayne County and make it healthy, you don't make it healthy by finding vendors from out of state and on the other side of the state and all of that. If there are people here that can provide the goods and services, then I think you need to be the conscience to say, Mr. Emergency Manager or Ms. Emergency Manager, I think you ought to consider these people. And then if that doesn't work, that's when you want the support of the community to say, hey, everybody, they're not listening to me, let's make them listen to us. And I think that's the way that ought to be handled, depending on which way it goes.
You talked a lot about the region, and as a longtime Detroit resident who grew up in Inkster, I've noticed, particularly in recent years, a huge focus on the city of Detroit, and I know part of that is landmass in relation to Wayne. But what efforts do you have planned to engage the other communities in Wayne County? That's
another great question, and it's a paradigm shift from the way the county has been run since I've been a county employee or involved in the county. And that is, the county's position has always kind of been as a caretaker or as the big brother or a fiefdom kind of outside of the other communities. We have 43 communities in Wayne County. I think what a county executive ought to be doing is collaborating with those 43 cities to help them get what they're trying to get done better. Now, some cities that could be a problem, but most places have an economic development plan. They know where they want to go. They know what they want to do. To me, the county's job is to help them get there. So if I can help with permitting, if I can help with environmental issues, if I have some support services that can provide something for a community at less cost, if another community has done it and we've helped them, can we share it with them so they don't have to pay the full freight for that? To me, at the end of the day, if 43 communities are healthy, then the county's healthy. And if the county's healthy, the tax base improves, and the county will get healthier along with those communities. And so, my attacking the problem is a collaborative attack, not an adversarial one. And maybe many citizens don't really understand that the county has worked that way before. But when I became sheriff, for example, the history had been the sheriff has the authority to do whatever he wants to do in Wayne County, and so he does it when he wants to. It didn't have anything to do with having a relationship with the other 43 police departments. If the sheriff wanted to send traffic cars to Livonia, he sends them to Livonia. If he wants to send them to River Rouge, he sends them to River Rouge. Well, the River Rouge cops are all sitting there looking like, who invited you? Why are you down here? It wasn't anything integrated into what they did. The first thing I did when I'd been a sheriff's deputy for, 20-something years. I knew what the issues were. I called all the police chiefs together and said, guys, what can I do to help you? And for the first 20 minutes, nobody said anything, because everybody's sitting there like, never been asked that question before. Never thought of a sheriff that way, And so after a while, we started having a healthy discussion about, okay, Detroit, what do you want? Well, we're having a hard time completing all our 911 calls because we're having so many of them. We want you, Sheriff, to pick up our felony fugitives, which we did to the tune of about 15,000 in just a few years. Other cities said, yeah, we got a lot of fugitives out there. Could you help us do that? Other cities said, we're so far from Detroit that transporting prisoners to the jail takes our scout cars out of service half the day. And they're not in the community doing what we pay them to do because of that. So at the end of the day, I met with all those guys. Okay, we started a prisoner transport unit. We started a fugitive apprehension team. And we supported those communities in a bunch of other ways. We applied for grants where we had auto theft task forces together. We collaborated, and the other departments loved it because it was a way of everybody doing better. And it allowed the sheriff's office to grow in collaboration with others. I don't like to run into people that frown at me all the time. I mean, that's not the natural order of things, as far as I'm concerned. And so I think the same thing happens in the county. What are the economic development projects that are helping communities, not necessarily our own project at the airport that may or may not, do something, and the ones we've had have not. There's a racetrack at the airport that our last investment was $26 million for a thoroughbred racetrack. Now, many of us are old enough to know when that industry left Michigan and know why it left. So who had that bright idea, I'm not sure. But I know we poured $26 million into it in our last investment. It went belly up in about 6 months, and now the grass is this tall. And that's taxpayers' money. But the county says it's broke. And it's going back to the union saying, I need $38 million from you, and I need more copay from you on health care, and I need this and that and the other. If you hadn't wasted the 26, you would need 38 here. And 26 from 38 would be a whole lot less of an ask. So I think dumb decisions are a big part of the problem. Management's a part of the problem. And being honest with workers. You have to lead from the front, which means you have to sacrifice before you ask others to sacrifice. And I don't see those sacrifices. A guy gets an outlandish pension from the county executive's office. Somebody else gets a severance package. That doesn't look to the unions like you gave. And then when you go to the union and say, give me 10% back, if I'm a good union president, I'm saying, you got to be out of your mind. I'm not giving you anything. So what does a new county executive has to do? He has to cut back on some of the things that he's had, some of the numbers of appointees that he's had. You have to say what you mean and mean what you say. And generally, if you're honest about it, people are tolerant of mistakes if it's an honest mistake. People don't hang you out to dry for making a mistake. They hang you out to dry for obfuscating your answer with respect to not getting it done, which is what I'm hearing all the time now. It's like, well, why did this happen? Well, it was the pension board's problem, or, why did this happen? Well, that was somebody else's problem. Well, if you're the guy in charge and you don't have any authority to do anything, why are you in charge? I think you just have to face the music sometime and try to make good music when you can.
Mr. Evans, what does the first 100 days of the Evans administration look like?
Is to set the team in place that I'm going to work with. Make sure I get out with all of the communities and stakeholders and start to engage those issues of what we need to do. What do we need to do to make the county work effectively? Two things I want to be measured by at the end of 4 years. Are property values going up in Wayne County? If they are, we're doing a good job. And the second thing is, are we increasing the population in Wayne County? Population in Wayne County has gone down for 12 straight years. I think we're at a point where we can start turning around that population. I think Detroit's starting to do that, and we need to follow suit. And not reinvent the wheel. The blight projects that are going on in Detroit now, it's a great project. Why reinvent it? Essentially, I did that work before the mayor when he was the prosecutor anyway. So, I mean, I was the guy who seized the drug houses and put them on the market before. So I know how to do it. Highland Park, other surrounding areas that have significant blight issues can benefit from that, as can a number of other communities as we start to work out. And so that if Detroit's going to have a renaissance, why don't we all have one? And why don't we do it as collaboratively as we can? I mean, I really think the next 4 to 6 years are very, very bright for Wayne County. It's just we got to get people to believe in government again. And when they do, and you get a leader who is at least going to lead, I think we're on the right track.
Mr. Evans, for the next 4 years, in order for this renaissance to occur and for Wayne County to move forward, will you be seeking assistance from Lansing? And if so, what would be a spill to the powers that be in Lansing?
Well, yeah, I mean, probably easier now to ask for money from Washington than Lansing. But I don't write Lansing off. I mean, I don't, I understand, it's a Republican administration and whatever that's supposed to mean. There will be people who will not want to cooperate with Detroit projects, maybe. But I also see people not cooperating with Detroit and Wayne County projects because we haven't demonstrated our ability to perform well. And so I don't dismiss the fact that there are people in Lansing just waiting for us to do what we're supposed to do. And to the extent that we start doing that, I think there are opportunities to get funds from Lansing. And I think there are opportunities to get funds from Washington. But we have to put on a better face. We've got to show a level of competency that we haven't been showing. And again, I think we need to go as regional partners. I have multiple counties, or the city and the county, seeking things together. I think the opportunity is much greater than just one person doing it. I mean, remember, Wayne County is about 48% Detroit. So it's a big chunk of it's Detroit, but the majority of it are the other communities. And so I don't have any favorite community. My favorite, I do have a favorite county, and that's Wayne County.
With all the issues that are facing Wayne County government, why did you decide to run? Why would you want this?
Yeah, everybody asks me that, and some people think it's a lack of common sense issue, or maybe a simpleness factor or something. But the truth of the matter with me, it's I don't covet titles, but I like to get stuff done. And so the challenge of doing the job is the motivation for me. You see something, it's make it akin to the stock market. I mean, if you could buy Ford at $1 a share, you'd probably buy a handful, because the likelihood is going up significantly. Well, I think the likelihood that Wayne County improves is going to be significant, and I'd like to be on the front of the ship that helps to get it there. That's really it. I mean, when I left the sheriff's job, incumbent sheriffs don't get thrown out of office in Wayne County. I mean, I could have retired there if I chose to do that. But I saw the crime problem in Detroit as being the most significant problem in the county, and so to be the caretaker of the sheriff's office while all the action was here just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so the decision to leave wasn't about the title. The title didn't make a lot of difference. It was about the opportunity to take on that challenge and try to fix the problem. While it didn't turn out exactly the way I would like it to be over time, I'm very comfortable about what we got done when we were there, and it hasn't been done before or after.
What do you think is your greatest accomplishment as far as leadership goes?
I'm not sure. I think it's a couple. I think I do know. Several years ago, and it probably isn't the most major accomplishment in terms of getting something done. I think the net result was the best. We had gone in Wayne County from, we had quadrupled the number of foreclosures that were occurring, people's houses being foreclosed. And the sheriff has a ministerial function in that process. And I kept sitting there looking at the numbers going up, and I could hear the president trying to create some refinance momentum and all. Anyway, I just said, okay, shut the doors. We're not going to do any more foreclosures. Well, of course, law didn't exactly support that. You know, as a lawyer for 28 years, I tried to make the most plausible arguments I could. But the real thing was, it was just making a mess in the communities. You were foreclosing the home, and then once the person was moved out of the home was stripped within 3 days. And so now the scrappers are selling the aluminum and the copper and all of that, and now you got a blight problem, so the neighbor who wasn't foreclosed now has an abandoned house that's stripped next door, so the neighbor's property value is plummeting. And all that about, you know, the people being foreclosed. And so we took about 90 days. We could fight them off about 90 days. Just about everybody in the free world sued me. But finally, I had to start doing the foreclosures again. But in that 90 days, lots and lots of people were able to refinance their homes, get another job, keep their houses. And so in some significant way, we cut down on blight and a number of those other issues. And I think did the morally right thing, which is, you know, these people have been paying their house notes forever. The economy got terrible. Okay. I never could figure out what the bank or the mortgage company's end game was when the house was vacant and they knew they weren't going to sell it or something anyway. It just seems like, you know it's going to get stripped. It's your house. Why wouldn't you leave the owner in the house and just collect rent or something? I mean, why would you make the house vacant? Anyway, I actually think that was the thing I felt the best about. I was the proudest of, was that we just took a stand, because the county executive didn't support me. The county lawyers didn't defend me. You know, this was just one of those things. You're out there on your own, buddy, and that's okay. Sometimes you just have to do that. I think that was probably the main one.
Wayne County has gone through a major population decline. How do you plan on reversing that?
Well, you improve the quality of life and you improve the management of the services you provide to citizens, and then it gets better. I mean, at the end of the day, again, if we do the right things to improve property values, the people will follow. You know, we've got a great location. I mean, you know, and that's why investors are coming in here now. International waterway, you know, all of the things that Detroit inherently has, what we have not had for a long time. Now we're starting to see it getting done. I mean, if you know, I'm around the city of Detroit quite often. Two things are going on. One is the blight program, which you hear about, but the second thing is people just have, I'm not feeling it. It's amazing what confidence will do. I mean, this is the homeowner with their own funds just saying what they need to do to make their communities better. I'm really optimistic. I enjoy the successes at the end of the process if you can have them. And, you know, you take them bite by bite, you know, but in 2 or 3 years, I think Lansing looks at us differently. I think Washington looks at us differently. I think the other counties look at us differently. And then after that happens, we look at each other differently, you know, more positively. And I think that's good for everybody.
A big issue in the city of Detroit is public safety. As a former chief, former sheriff, how do you plan on changing that?
Well, just to help in any way you can. I mean, I certainly understand the issues. And some of the issues are issues that involve both the state, the county, and the city. And part of the problem over the last 20 years is that there hasn't been the harmony between all three. I mean, at the end of the day, the prison takes the bodies. If they're overcrowded on the prison end, then too many bodies are backing up into the county jail. If they're backing up into the county jail, we have overcrowding problems in the jail, additional county costs, and you have the police department making arrests with nowhere for the person to go because we got something clogged in there. And so we got to be much more honest as a group of agencies about what the fix really is. And I think I bring that to the table because I understand it. A perfect example is if we had built this new jail correctly, you know, and we didn't, but if we built it correctly, the little known fact is it wasn't going to be big enough anyway. You know, and so the initial sell about we'll close all of these other jails and we'll save all of this money if you just build this for us really wasn't true. They probably could have closed a couple facilities, but they couldn't close them all because the pent-up need for jail beds exceeds our capacity, and it has for 15 or 20 years. Some of you remember when the Detroit had the Detroit House of Correction. and it closed. It used to be in Northville or Plymouth on 5 Mile. That was 1,100 beds that have never been replaced in our system since the late 70s. And the problem hasn't gone away. It hasn't minimized. We just have a big hole in it. And so the answer is, well, Detroit got out of the business. What do you want us to do? I don't want you to do anything necessarily. I want you to acknowledge the fact that 1,100 bodies, regardless of who ran the institution, is still 1,100 bodies. And if those 1,100 bodies are out walking around now, not in custody when they should be in custody, then that explains some of your larcenies and your receiving and concealing stolen properties. I mean, it's a direct correlation, but in Wayne County, what we do is we plan based on how many bonds we can sell instead of plan based on what the need is. If you need 2,500 beds, but you only have the money to sell bonds to make a 200-bed facility, then wait till you have the money. Just wait till you have the money. Don't build an inadequate facility. Illustration. The big jail downtown, the 12-story jail we call Division I with the little thin windows, it was designed and built for 550 prisoners. Brand new, the first day it opened, it had 1,100 prisoners in it. It has been functionally obsolete since the day it opened. Talk about planning. Designed for 550 people. The elevators support 550 people. The kitchen supports 550 people. The classrooms support 550 people. The gymnasium support 550 people. It has always had double that number. Now they need to tear it down and build a new one. Yeah, absolutely. Poor planning. Didn't have a clue. Made a bad business decision. Spent taxpayers' money. And the officers that have worked in it for 20 years have worked in a difficult-to-function place because of that. I mean, can you imagine elevators that are supposed to take 20 people, and now you got 40 people you need to take in and up? I mean, it's just been a mess. That's the way we have planned these kinds of things in Wayne County, and we just got to stop doing that.
What would a Warren Evans administration do day one? What's for number one on the agenda?
Day one is bring your team together and spend half of the day outlining this is where we're trying to go. This is what we want to do, but not as a dictator, as a team builder. Okay, anybody's, what are the issues here? I mean, what are we talking about? This is what we need to do. I want everybody to go back to their respective units and understand that my management style is I'm going to hold you accountable for the results of your subordinates. I don't go look for the little guy and figure out how to nail him to the wall. If I have a department head, that's his department. If I walk into a place that does permits, county executive in disguise, so I go in and nobody's there to take care of you or do what needs to be done. Or there's a discourteous clerk or something like that. The clerk is the product of whoever manages that area. The person who manages that area ought to know whether it's customer friendly or it's not. And if it's not, that's the person I need to talk to. And that's the paradigm change that's hard to make, with people. Many people think they've promoted themselves to a comfort level where they just kind of sit there and collect a check. And that's not really the way it should be. They promote themselves to a comfort level of understanding this area, and you manage this area. Now, if I come into the area and it's not well run, then we've got to talk. And once you get that done, that first kind of day, it's going to take a couple weeks for some people to figure it out, but then the customer service improves. And another part about that is, and then the workers actually feel better about what they do, because people aren't inherently lazy. But if you fall into a rut and nobody challenges you, it's easy to get lazy, but that's not the natural order of things with people. And so when county employees start to get a little prouder about what they're doing, and they start treating customers better, then we're starting to get where we need to get.
Overall, the county is such a mess. Why do you want to be county executive for?
Because I'm a glutton for punishment. No, because I like to fix things. And I think the challenge of getting it fixed is really fun. engaging people to get something done. You know, it's almost like a team sport, really. You know, let's make this a world-class county, and the let's means all of us. You know, let's, as a team, do that. And, you know, that's the fun for me.
You think you'll have the resources to do that?
Not right away. You know, we'll have to cut in different areas. But again, in keeping with what I said earlier, first of all, lead from the front, so I've got to start to cut first. And the other thing is, just like we all do in our homes, the county has to run its finances more like we do at home. When money's bad at home, you stop doing the nice-to-do stuff that you used to do, right? And you move the money to the must-do stuff. You got to pay the house note. Got to keep the lights on. Don't have to go to the show. Yeah, that's right. Don't have to buy ice cream. You know, the county thinks it can do it all, and after they've done it all for a long time, then they give it a real important name called a structural deficit. Nobody here has a structural deficit. You spend what you have, and when you don't have it, you don't spend. The structural deficit is kicking the can down the road year after year and saying, I'll get it and pay for it later, you know. If the county ran like most of us ran our houses, we wouldn't be in trouble. So when you think about a government agency that's, you know, deals with billions of dollars, and then you think about the fact that it probably doesn't run any better than your house, then you get a little nervous. Oh my God, what am I investing in? But I don't think it's much more complicated than that, honestly.
A lot of the issues in Wayne County, including blight and to some extent crime, can be attributed to jobs. I'm wondering what sort of efforts you have planned to increase jobs in Wayne County.
Yeah, a couple things. One is all of the other. In order for jobs to be sustainable, you have to deal with the quality of life issues that we've been talking about already, the public safety, the transportation, those sorts of things. And then when it comes to the actual job creation, we need to understand that all over the country, small business is where it's going. And so one thing I'm going to do, first of all, is have a small business ombudsperson in my administration that will report directly to me. And their job is to be out there and find out what small businesses need. Is it capital? Is it permitting issues? Those things. And in addition, what do people who start small businesses, younger people, what do they need their community to have besides the small business? See, people my age always think about what it is we want. What it is I want and what it is he wants in terms of outside entertainment and stuff may not be anywhere near the same thing. But I can only know what I know. You know, the ombudsman's looking, saying, okay, we want to attract younger people. We want them to stay here when they leave college. We want them, okay, what do they need to stay here? You know, I'm not going to hang out in the coffee shop. I ain't against coffee shops. I mean, good place. You know, what are the kind of nightclubs? What are the kind of business? What are the quality of life issues? I mean, you know, where do you want to live? Do you want to be able to walk your dog along the waterfront? I mean, what is it you want to do? And so we can kind of help design the layers to support the business. I mean, and when you support the business, then other people come to the business, and then you're increasing the population, and then you're starting to look a little bit like New York and like Chicago and like some other places that have energy, you know. But I think what we've done wrong in the past is we looked at one part of it, like let's bring a business in. And just bringing the business in was all we were concerned about. But we never fixed the public safety, we never fixed the lighting, we never did any of those other things. So now the business is here, and nobody wants to shop after 9:30 because they're afraid of getting knocked in the head. Or the lights aren't on in the parking lot, so you don't want to go there then. I mean, you know, you can't just do, to me, you can't just do one part of it. You know, you have to look at all of the layers, and you have to have department heads who are functional in those areas and say, okay, what do we need to make this a great place, this small area, this small area? Or how do I help Inkster to do this? Or how do I help Southgate to do this? Or, you know, how do I help Flat Rock to do this? Or how do I help Northville to do this? Or whatever it is. I mean, we have some diverse, outstanding communities in the county. And they're going to be different. And that's kind of what makes them unique, is that they're different. But there's nothing wrong with difference. But the county executive needs to understand the differences and try to support the unique identities of these communities and not so much have a cookie cutter, county approach to everybody that doesn't fit anybody.
Mr. Evans, we talk, I think everybody agrees that public safety is very important. One vital component of public safety, though, is the prosecution of criminals. And, the current administration has had very well-known disagreements with the current Wayne County prosecutor. What do you envision the Evans administration role in working with whoever's in the Wayne County prosecutor's office to keep Wayne County safe?
Wow, I don't quite know where to go there because there's so much and it's a great question. First of all, having been sheriff, I understand that you can only work within a budget if you're given a rational budget. So I know that the prosecutor does not have a rational budget. I know that as sheriffs don't have a rational budget. It's like saying, and the county executive will always say to you, hey, I'm giving you a lump sum budget. You use it any way you want to. Okay. So now your house note's $2,400 a month, and I give you $1,800. Use it any way you want to. Can't pay the house note, can you? That's essentially what the story is here. Partially it's because I don't think the county executive understands what it takes to do that. And everybody says, well, he was the sheriff for 20 years. Sheriff is a position. Being a trained police person is a vocation. The current county executive and former sheriff was never a police officer. I don't think he ever made an arrest in his life. I don't think that's anything, and not that the world should be measured by arrests, but it is important to understand what your people do, not just in a very glossy sort of way, but what they do. I started working at 21 years old as a jail deputy and promoted up through every rank in the department. So you don't promote without learning the job. And so when you get to the top, I understand exactly what it felt like at the bottom. I also understand what all the functions are. I understand where we can save money. I understand where we can do things differently. But I also know there's a minimum threshold that you have to make this thing work. And so that's the sheriff's office. In the prosecutor's office, she's lost a number of prosecutors. And what I'm hearing all the time is, well, the number of new cases has gone down. That's not the measure. That's not the measure of the functions in the prosecutor's office. I've been there, worked there. I understand it. And so there's the poor funding issue. And then there's the other issue that I think is really the moral issue, which is, and if you've read the papers this year, you've heard about the argument that Facano has had with giving the prosecutor sufficient money to deal with rape kits. To me, that's an insane argument. First of all, because you're talking about money to protect the rights of women who've been violated. I don't understand the correlation between violation and money. Obviously, you got to find the money. How do you say you don't have the money? That issue revolves around, if a woman's raped, the DNA of the perpetrator will be a part of the rape kit. The rape kit is the hospital swab, whether it's saliva or whatever the fluid is, the DNA of the perpetrator will be there. In the vast majority of cases, we know who the perpetrator is when we can do the DNA test because his DNA profile is already on file. So if the woman could be raped and I could take the rape kit directly to the lab and they could do the DNA test, I would know more often than not who the perpetrator is and I could just go over and arrest him. But based on this rape kit issue, it now takes 14 to 16 months for it to be tested. And so since many rapists are in fact serial rapists, you've given them 14 to 16 months to continue to violate people before we can figure out, who you are. To me, that's a moral issue that it's not, I don't have enough money, it's we don't have enough money, so let's go get it. I can't believe that you wouldn't find private dollars that would contribute to that. I can't believe that you couldn't get federal grant dollars to contribute to that. the money would come. What's not there is the cooperation. It's like a war between two people. First of all, it should never be in the newspapers anyway. You know, I mean, that's the number one problem. And then the number two problem is, why aren't you holding each other's hand? And when I say that, it makes it sound like the prosecutor's not interested. She's doing everything she can. She's seeking grants. She's doing everything in the world. It's the county executive who is not stepping up to the plate and saying, this is a major issue. We've got to go get it fixed and get it done. And then the last part of the prosecutor's issue is, why have 43 police departments working extremely hard to get things done if you don't have enough prosecutors to prosecute the cases? That's taken away from the effectiveness of the 43 police agencies. And so that has to be more of a global fix. And what do? That's the must-do stuff. You know, I kept talking about we have to eliminate some of the nice-do stuff. You got to fund the prosecutor and you got to fund the sheriff. And you know what? Sometimes when you're dealing with other elected officials, you're not always going to agree. And so, you know, my term for it is constructive coercion. You know, sometimes you might have to do a little wrangling with other folks to get everybody on the same page, but you don't do that in public. You do that behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, you know, if there are 4 elected officials who aren't taking pot shots at each other and fighting with each other, then it kind of looks like you got a county that's working. You know, and I know that shouldn't be a novel concept, but, you know, it kind of is around here. I would tell them that, you know, not enough Wayne County citizens, like everywhere, vote or get actively involved in what's going on, and the county has added to that with the corruption and other issues that turn off voters. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the only game in town. Pick somebody who has the ability to lead, that wants to get it done, that has a passion for the work that needs to be done. And give them your support, and I think you can see this county turn around. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
How will you lead?
From the front. It's the only way to lead. You have to be there. You have to know what's going on. As I said earlier, shame on you if you didn't know, and shame on you if you did know. You know, when problems go on, you have to be the one to understand them, fix them, deal with them, and I think I know how to do that.
What would you want voters to do August 5th?
I'd love for voters to go to the polls and vote for me on August the 5th. I'd love for voters to go to the polls before August the 5th if they need to. I'd love for voters to use absentee ballots. I think there are 2 things. One is, obviously I want the support, but the more significant the support is, the more mandate is to change Wayne County in the right direction. And so vote totals make a difference too. It's an indicator of how serious the citizens are about change, and so I think that's important also.
As a leader, how important do you feel it is to lead by example?
Yeah, I think it's critical to lead by example, and it's critical to be transparent with the leadership. I think I've always done that. I don't think I know another way to do that, frankly. That's the way I do.
Mr. Evans, I understand that MDOT is expanding or starting a rail system through Detroit out to the burbs. How important is that in building Wayne County, and should it be expanded to other, not cities, but other streets other than Woodward and what do you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the M1 rail coming down Woodward is going to be more for an entertainment district sort of thing. We're, of the top 30 cities in this country, we're number 30 in terms of mass transit. So obviously, we need to have connectors to Flint and to Toledo and, Ann Arbor and other places that make it easy for our citizens to go back and forth. But that's money, so there are 2 ways to deal with that. One is the regional collaboration again that I talked about, and the other is just the practical sitting down with all of the existing entities and say, how can we work our schedules more effectively together so the person can get from point A to point B. DDOT, SMART, there are other bus systems, but there's probably more standalone stuff going on there than an understanding that this person who lives on the east side of Detroit has got to get to Farmington Hills to go to work. And that's a long jaunt, so unless they're going to get up 4 hours early, could you, first of all, have your route times decent, and then can those route times sequence with the next bus system that'll need to go from there to wherever else it's going. So, I mean, I think there's some efficiencies that come from just pulling all of the existing bus systems together and saying, hey, can we look at doing some things to just make what we're doing here more efficient? And then down the line, whatever that type of rail needs to be, figure that out. But I'm almost nervous to talk about that in the depth that we're in right now. I mean, that's a dream, and a dream I'd like to get to, but we have to have some money to make that dream work. And so I think right now, let's just do a better job with what we have and figure out where we need to go.
This is the last question, I'm sorry, just to wrap it up. I want you to tell me a little bit more about your leadership, your style of leadership.
You got me that time. Hold on.
This is the last.
Okay, yeah.
I want to, I don't want to stay here, but I know.
Yeah. To me, leadership is a dynamic process that means you're always involved. Leadership means picking a course, a direction, setting goals and objectives, and then motivating a bunch of people to see that same goal and direction, and to start carrying the water and get there. To me, that's what it is. If we make mistakes along the way, it's going to be the leader's fault. But at the end of the day, when we get across the finish line, it's a team accomplishment. And you can't minimize how important that is, because once you get a team to accomplish one thing, oh, they're geeked then. And then accomplishment becomes a part of the process. Then everybody starts, we did that, we can do this, we can do this. And it's amazing what a team can do, you know, when you set a good direction and you motivate them and you give them the tools to get the job done. I've had some great leaders that I've worked for that have done that for me. And so it's not something you just wake up one morning and know, but there are people that I've worked for that have different styles. I've never seen one style that was perfect, and I'm sure mine's not. But there's enough good that I could glean from those folks to say this is a good way to go forward.
Why should I vote for Warren Evans August 5th?
Because you're a good friend of mine. Got you, didn't I?